Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe continuing his book tour this week and confirming in a series of interviews that he opened a counterintelligence investigation into President Trump after the firing of FBI Director James Comey. McCabe even suggesting that the president might be a Russian asset.
Do you still believe the president could be a Russian asset?
I think it's possible. I think that's why we started our investigation, and I'm really anxious to see where Director Mueller concludes that.
All this amid new reports that the Mueller probe is wrapping up, and as former Trump fixer Michael Cohen prepares to testify on Capitol Hill next week. Let's bring in James Trusty. He is a former Justice Department prosecutor. Welcome. Good to have you here again. So let's start with the McCabe revelation that he and the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein talked about the idea of invoking the 25th Amendment to replace President Trump. Have you ever heard of anything like that before?
No, it's pretty outlandish, and I feel that way really for two different reasons. One is McCabe and one is Rosenstein. McCabe has serious credibility problems. The Inspector General found that he lied on multiple occasions, including lying about the last conversation with the Inspector General. He's on a book tour. He's got a criminal referral out there, and he's got a lot of axes to grind as he goes on these softball interviews. On the other side of it, I know Rod Rosenstein. I know him to be a career prosecutor, a guy who's very stand-up and ethical, and also very intelligent about the Constitution. I can't imagine for a moment that Rod would ever think the 25th Amendment was remotely in play. It's about disability, not dislike. And so I think on both ends of the spectrum, there's some serious credibility questions surrounding Mr. McCabe's allegations.
So Rosenstein has said he was in no position to be able to invoke the 25th Amendment. Of course, he wasn't, but he doesn't deny that he may have he raised the issue. So I mean, maybe this was just the turmoil of the time, the kind of chaos after the Comey firing that might have come up.
Yeah, I don't think it would have come up in a straight-laced way. I think it's possible that Rosenstein was sarcastic, dismissive of the notion. But you also have to remember, I think, when DOJ issues these denials, they're being very careful not to expose fuller, more detailed investigative conversations. So I think he's kind of hitting back with one arm behind his back rather than being able to give a full-throated response to what McCabe is saying.
So you'd like to see him testify, as Lindsey Graham has said to the Senate Judiciary Committee about all this with Rod Rosenstein? Would that could be helpful, I suppose?
I think it'd be helpful. I don't know if I wish that on any of my friends or my enemies, but the reality is I think Rod will hold up very well in front of Congress when it comes to this type of questioning. I don't think he has anything to hide. And I think there's a big comparison, a stark difference between him and McCabe when it comes to how they'll perform.
Just in terms of the Constitution, if you are somebody in an administration, and you think the President of the United States is in some ways compromised, isn't your obligation to presumably resign and to then state why you're resigning? And under the Constitution, the remedy for something like that is impeachment. Go to Congress and say, look, this president is compromised, can't fulfill his duties, and I'm willing to testify to that effect.
Right. I think that's the honorable kind of law enforcement approach to it, and that's what seems so out of place when you talk about McCabe and Comey, going on The View, doing book tours. It's just a different politicized world at the FBI top reaches recently, and I think even a lot of rank-and-file FBI agents that I know are welcoming the change and the scrutiny and want to see kind of a different attitude from the top of their organization than they're seeing from these guys.
All right, so let's talk about where Robert Mueller stands right now. A lot of talk, media reports that somehow this is going to be over soon and he'll issue a report or tell new Attorney General Bill Barr that he is wrapping up. Where do you see this at the present moment?
Well, I think there's a lot of reason to think that it is at the finish line. I mean, part of it goes back to the fact that President Trump was given a take-home assignment, that he was given written questions. That sounded like something that was more checking a box than trying to get an incriminating answer. The fact that sentencings are starting to happen for either failed or breached cooperators, that tells me they're not trying to preserve them for trial testimony. And I think there's been personnel movement where a lot of people have left the Mueller investigative team, the prosecutors, back to their home agencies. So I think that all makes sense that we're heading towards a finish line. What's interesting is getting a report to the Attorney General doesn't necessarily mean the rest of us see it.
That's right.
So there's a real open question about how it would be released, how much would be released, and what the timing of that would be.
Well, what would be your advice to Bill Barr? Look, I mean, there's an argument for making it public just for the good of the country, to be able to see and lay out what it is, the arguments that he's making. On the other hand, if, in fact, there isn't a lot of, there's maybe some innuendo about certain individuals in it, you don't want that to be public without charges.
Yeah, look, I don't think Barr needs any guidance from me. He's a pretty steady hand, experienced guy. But I think what he'll probably feel pretty compelled to do is scrub it for truly sensitive information. I don't mean embarrassing. I mean, like, you know, international kind of intelligence community type information that has to be redacted. There may well be some of that. But I also think he realizes in the big picture it's really politically untenable to think that this report would go no further than the president. So I suspect he feels a pretty instant tug to have this thing released. If he releases it to Congress, it'll take all of 7 seconds for it to leak. But I think he'll probably be a strong advocate for full disclosure to everyone.
That makes more sense, just to have him do it without waiting for somebody to leak it and make it look like it's somehow nefarious. That would be my argument. You agree?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, it's a political calculation more than a legal one, but I think at the end of the day, you know, dripping it out through leaks or through kind of partisan half stories is not the way to do it. They should just let the whole thing see daylight.
All right, James Trusty, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Joining us now to provide more insight on the Mueller probe is former Assistant Director of the FBI, Mark Morgan. So, Mark, you worked directly for Special Counsel Mueller back when he was the FBI Director. You know his MO, you know how he thinks and how he operates. Read the tea leaves for us. Is there anything that happened this week that gives you an indication of when he might be wrapping up?
Not really. It's really comical as I'm watching the news cycle and talk about it. I mean, how many times have we said, oh, it's going to be released, it's going to be released. What I know from former Director Mueller is he's not influenced by any of this white noise. He's going to release the report when it's complete and thorough and he's ready. Now, some of the tea leaves, just from an investigative standpoint that you'll look at when you're coming to conclusion is, so the president, what he's going to interact and when he thinks he's got, whether the answers to the questions and he's got everything that he thinks he's going to get from the president, that would really be, for me, the final tea leaves that he's concluding and he's ready to give the report.
So it sounds like you're saying the president actually has some input into when Mueller wraps up, meaning what he tells him and what he gives him will influence when Mueller decides to call it.
Exactly, and how far he cooperates and whether Mueller believes that he's gotten everything he can or should get from the president, and that could go back and forth and make the determination of when he's going to actually end the report.
So now the president's supporters say this whole thing has been going on for way too long, nearly 2 years now. It's all proof that there is no collusion. The investigation is kind of hanging by a thread. Time to bring it to an end. Do you agree? Is that true?
Well, I think you can take some liberty with what's out there, because as we're seeing the indictments that have been made, I mean, the factual information so far is there's nothing in any of those indictments that have suggested collusion. So I can see people that have question and draw, I think conclusionary statements out, there's no collusion. I think that's still premature. I think you have to wait until the final report comes out before we can actually make that determination.
So now only 5 seconds left. What are the odds, scale of 1 to 100, what is the % odds that we, the American people, are going to get to see some form of the report?
Some form, but the complete report, it's not happening.
All right. Mark Morgan, thanks so much for your time today. We'll check back with you soon.
Thank you.
Here to react is Corey Lewandowski, former Trump 2016 campaign manager. Corey, thanks so much for being here. So the first question is, will we ever get the Mueller report, and how will Democrats react to it?
Well, look, the Mueller report should have been handed in this week. We know the president is leaving to go to Hanoi to renegotiate the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, one of the most important things our nation has and the world has in front of it. And we should have had the report out already to prove to the world something I already know. There was no collusion, no cooperation, no coordination between the Trump campaign and any outside entity to impact the outcome of the 2016 election. But let's be clear. If there was anything, this is on the Obama watch, and Comey and Clapper and Brennan are the ones who would have been responsible. They never came to the campaign and said the Russians were trying to hack into the election. Where is the accountability for them, and where's the accountability to Hillary Clinton?
Hey, Corey, let me ask you this. There are calls and some questions as to how much of this report will be made public once it goes to Attorney General Barr. Are you for making the entire thing public and have full transparency here?
Absolutely. Look, I think the American people have seen a $40 million witch hunt against this president. They have a right to see where their money has been spent. And if this report is honest, it is going to say one thing, and it's going to be very clear. The Trump campaign didn't collude with anybody, but the Clinton campaign paid $5 million to Perkins Coie to go put together this false dossier. And this whole thing, this whole investigation was predicated on liars like Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page, and we want the report to be public so the American people can see that.
At the end of the day, Corey, what do you think the new Attorney General does? Is it going to be full disclosure, partial with some redactions? What do you see ultimately at the end of the day?
Well, I have a lot of faith in Attorney General Barr. I'm glad that he's overseeing this final resolution. I'm glad that Rod Rosenstein is leaving the Justice Department. And what I think he's going to do, with no inside knowledge whatsoever, is he's going to share that with the committees of jurisdiction, and he should outline unequivocally that there should be no additional investigations, because Attorney General Barr is going to be the one person who has the full unredacted version. He'll write a summary, he'll present it to Congress, and he will show through his summary of the work that Bob Mueller has done, there was no collusion of the Trump campaign with any outside entity.
So, Corey, Democrats have been very adamant, and some Republicans, about protecting the Mueller probe, saying that he's credible. And yet here we are without the report, and with the House led by Democrats now saying if the Mueller report doesn't give them what they want, they're going to launch their own investigation. How should the Trump administration and the campaign respond to that?
Well, look, we know that Adam Schiff has never seen a camera that he's run from. He's probably the biggest leaker in Congress, I can tell you that. He has his own agenda, which is not the agenda of the American people. And I think very candidly the Democrats are going to overreach on this. Once the Mueller report is handed in to the Department of Justice, and that is made public, the American people will see what we already know. No collusion, no cooperation. The president's 100% cleared. But that won't stop Adam Schiff, and that will come back to haunt the Democrats in the 2020 election, where I predict Donald Trump will have a bigger margin of victory in the Electoral College than he did in 2016.
You heard it here first.
All right. We'll see
Mark the tape.
We shall see. It's not over yet. Corey, thank you very much.
Thanks, Corey.